vaccines save the world? Scientists say rice, corn, potatoes or lettuce can be used to produce antibodies.
It's a kind of complex process which starts by the procedure that infects them with foreign DNA, genetic material that reprograms them to stop doing everything else and just make one protein, recombinant protein, which is a medicine that we want to produce.
Biotech firms are already in clinical trials with their plant-based drugs or awaiting approval from health agencies to combat Ebola, the norovirus, and COVID-19. I'm Ben Fazulin. This isn't just about pleasing vegans. A plant-based COVID jab would be cheaper and quicker. And instead of using hamster ovaries or monkey kidneys, you can use veggies or even tobacco.
The plants being grown inside this greenhouse could form the basis of a new COVID-19 vaccine. The Nicotiana benthamiana, to give it its proper name, is currently the focus of a study by Canadian biotechnology company Medicago and Britain's GlaxoSmithKline. 20,000 people are taking part in the trial. It's the first time a plant-based vaccine is being developed. You introduce the DNA which triggers the production of a spike protein very similar to the coronavirus, but which isn't infectious. When you remove it from the plant, put it in the vaccine and add an adjuvant, a substance that boosts the body's immune response, the vaccine can generate more antibodies. Preliminary results suggest the plant-based vaccine may produce up to 50 times more antibodies than other jabs. Gisela Leclerc is among 7,000 Argentinian participants in the trial. She works as a journalist and has written extensively about COVID-19 vaccines. Now she wants to learn more about production methods herself. A lot of people are looking for natural alternatives, for another way of producing and consuming food. In this context, vegetarians and vegans are especially interested in the idea of a plant-based vaccine. While no other COVID-19 jab is of animal origin either, this particular trial has attracted many vegan and vegetarian test subjects in Argentina. The country, with its rich livestock tradition, is the second largest beef consumer per capita worldwide. But the number of vegetarians and vegans is growing. They now make up over 10% of the population. Linking meat consumption to environmental issues, anything that bans animals from our plates, is very controversial in Argentina due to our traditions and deeply ingrained habits. But every day, people are becoming more environmentally aware. Against this backdrop, a plant-based vaccine, even one which is being tested on animals, has already piqued the interest of many people.
I asked Zachary Leblanc from Queensland University of Technology why animals are still used to make vaccines.
Hey, Ben. Well, it's an interesting question. Mainly, when you say animals, typically what's used for vaccine manufacturers are actually animal cells. So at that point, I wouldn't quite call it an animal because it's not an organism at that point. It's just a cell in culture that's being used to produce these vaccines, which are complex proteins. So I wouldn't quite say that animals are being harmed in the process. But the advantage of using plants is that it's really in the scalability of the system versus these other mammalian cell-based systems.
And why is it cheaper?
So it's cheaper because of the scalability, essentially. If you think about the inputs that you need for growing a plant, right? You need to give it water, you need to give it sunlight, and you need to give it dirt. You compare those inputs to a lot of these other systems, which are fermenters that are used to culture large amounts of mammalian cells, and it's visibly a lot cheaper when you're producing a plant to amplify this biomass, which can then produce your vaccine.
I was also reading that there's no need for bioreactors, in some cases no purification process, so I guess you're cutting a lot of costs there, and does that make it then safer all in all?
So in terms of safety, yeah, because if you think about pathogens that act on mammalian cells, if you're producing your vaccine mammalian cell, there is a possibility of a pathogen that can affect that mammalian cell, also affecting the end user. Now, if you're using a plant, they don't share any pathogens with humans, so you're not going to have a pathogen that's going to attack your cultures that would then attack the end user. So in that sense, it's more safe. And to answer the bit about bioreactors, actually, when you're using plants as a production system, the plant itself is the bioreactor. So that sort of feeds into why they're more cost effective as a production platform.
So the million-dollar question for you, Zach, how much quicker would we have immunized the world if we'd had a plant-based COVID vaccine, considering they're quicker, cheaper, and safer?
Yeah, I'd say it's nearly $1 billion question when you're talking about COVID vaccines. But I don't think much would change, to be honest, because the hurdle is really getting through those clinical trials. And for production of a COVID vaccine, I mean, there's a group in North America called Medicago that's in phase 3 clinical trials for production of a COVID-19 vaccine. And after receiving the sequence for the spike protein, they were able to produce a vaccine within 20 days. So they had it on hand. It's just that you need all that time to make sure it's safe to distribute to the general population. And that's why those lengthy clinical trials are there. So
will we get one during this pandemic, or are we going to have to wait some years until we see a plant-based vaccine for whatever the disease may be?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, let's see how long the pandemic lasts, right? But I would say there's some promising candidates that are being produced by Medicago in North America. They have a COVID-19 vaccine, which is in phase 3 clinical trials, which means, I mean, I would expect an announcement about that sometime this year, I think, but who knows how long these things take. They also have another vaccine, a quadrivalent flu vaccine that they have in production, which is also in phase 3 clinical trials. So I think it's a really exciting time, and I think it's likely that we'll be seeing a plant-based vaccine in the near future. Yeah.
Just briefly as well, can you eliminate the need for animal testing for these vaccines so that the process is 100% vegan?
So I don't know about that part, because when you're going to clinical trials, you're putting this vaccine into human participants in the trial. And before that step, you want to really test it on a living system so you can be sure that it's safe before it's going in a real life person's arm. So I don't see a pathway towards eliminating the use of animals. Maybe sometime in the future when you can properly mimic those systems, but at this point, no, I don't think we can eliminate animals from the process.
Zachary Leblanc from QUT, Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane, Australia. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. Take care.